Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Medical Myths, the show about what not to do with your body. And today I have a special guest, almost a doctor, coming all the way from the land down under, which is why we're at a different time today. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this. I'm ready to see what's happening, but I'm kind of excited in a way that my brain might end up hurting at the end from the
It will.
pseudoscience, but we'll see. So yeah, you
Yeah,
can
can
see
you
I've got
introduce yourself
all my
to my audience? I know some of us know who you are, but not everybody is familiar.
Yes. So as the name suggests, I am also trying to become a doctor, but I'm doing a PhD, so not a medical doctor, and I'm doing it in physics. And so my background, I basically play with lasers for a living. That's hopefully where we'll come into it. But I study what's in a field known as spectroscopy, which is basically where I use light to investigate something about matter, which is whether it's concentration or what a molecule or structure looks like, something like that. That's my field. And hopefully that gives me enough knowledge, although I do also have a background in both physics and chem, to tackle any of today's problems. And I also have a little YouTube channel that I make some science content on. So hopefully that's all good too. I'm hoping to release a video today.
Oh, awesome. Everyone go subscribe to Almost a Doctor for all of your physics content needs. And also, I mean, you talked about lasers and things. So are you pretty familiar with how energy works?
Yeah, well, I think more so than the people we're going to see in a moment. Not that that's a huge thing or a huge bar to jump over. I am fairly familiar with how it works, at least in that regards. Although, hopefully, we don't get into like high energy particle physics, because then I'm going to need to call some friends.
Yeah, well, I think between the two of us, we know enough to attack these myths. And I mean, I took 2 semesters of calculus-based physics, so I know a little bit. Like at least even I know more about energy than these people, and I've barely scratched the surface in terms of physics. So at least I have somebody here that can fill in the things that I don't know about and kind of hopefully explain things more to the audience in a way that I just don't know enough about. So I appreciate having you here for this. I think we'll start with
Thank you.
maybe we'll start with this article. Because I think this article might take a bit to debunk. So, and that's kind of where I want the meat of the discussion to go. And then if we end up finishing with this article, I have a video with some other things that can maybe touch on some other aspects. But this one really caught my interest. And because granted, they make a lot of claims, but they also try to be scientific about it, and it's really funny. So I hope you find this as funny as I'm finding it.
Oh, I like it when they try and go science, and it's just nope.
So this is a makeup company. Like they sell beauty supplies, but they also sell crystals. And they have this article called Crystals: The Science Behind the Spiritual. Already very fascinating. And of course, they're trying to tell you to buy their crystals. So I think we'll take this, we'll kind of read through it, and we can address everything as they come up. Feel free to stop me at any time that you want to chime in and say something. Because like this is your show, I'm just tagging along for the ride. So they start off saying the science, how crystals affect us. Science has proven that matter is 99.9999. I don't know. I'm not going to count out all the nines that they have listed here. Empty space. And what makes up this empty space? Energy. Energy
They're
is
already
everything.
Wrong.
Yeah, they're incredibly wrong.
Because I think when you talk about there being energy in empty space, that's just because purely empty space is unstable. So there is tiny little bits. You get what is known as virtual particles that pop in and out. But it's not like an energy source that, as of yet, we can tap into or can easily detect. I think they would have been better going off something like dark energy or dark matter almost at this point, but we can't really use those either because that's the point of them being dark, is that they don't interact with us yet, or we haven't figured out a way to detect them outside of looking for the gravitational effects. But yeah, I'm already the alarm bells are ringing, being like, that's not how a physicist would word this, and
Yeah,
they're
so
trying to
so
go
for the
down physics.
audience, what is the scientific definition of energy?
Oh, that's actually a really good one. There's two parts to it when you think about energy in terms of physics. So if you're looking at, say, thermodynamics, you could say it's basically the ability to do something, to do work. Is but then you also need to consider that there's also entropy as well. So entropy is also adds in a measure of how useful that energy is to actually to get something
Mhm.
done, because temperature, well, objects with a temperature will have energy, but if everything is the same temperature, you can't move that energy about. It all wants to sit there. Thermodynamics doesn't let you. But I can pump energy from one source to another, and I can do that, say, as a heater. That's hot, and it dissipates its energy out. So, and hopefully this isn't too complicated for anyone, but the thing that I learned in both chemistry and physics is known as the Gibbs free energy equation.
Oh
That
yeah.
tells you if something's going to occur, particularly if you're looking at, say, chemical reactions, but you can apply it to pretty much anything. And it's a balance between enthalpy, which is what people would think of as like traditional energy, like heat, uh, etc. Although it gets really, really complicated. And then you've got enthalpy, which also takes temperature into account and is about that balance. So moving between things. So explosions are a really, really, really good example of that, because you get a lot of like energy out of and heat out of the actual chemical reaction. But the entropy also is very, very favorable in these equations, because you go from having a tiny little amount of solid to a lot of gas. Everything likes to expand and everything is very, very happy. So it's not something I have an easy explanation in my head, because things get very complicated, but
Mhm.
it is basically the ability to do work, to do something. So, and what makes things even more confusing is if you go into general relativity, everyone's quite, well, most people are familiar with the equation E equals mc squared, but what it tells us, oh, and by the way, it was only side note, it was actually only Einstein drew that in a margin. It wasn't actually one of his
Mhm.
main equations. He was just like doing all of his maths and just like, oh yeah, by the way, this is the thing on the side, and then kept going.
Mhm.
But it tells us that matter and energy have an equivalence. They're not. It doesn't mean they're identical, but it means they're the same. So yes, all matter is kind of made up of energy, but I don't like how they're talking about it being in the spaces as well. That doesn't sit
Yeah,
very
so
well with me.
does it seem like here's kind of what I'm gathering from their arguments and kind of where this is getting fallacious is they have this spiritual definition of energy in being like this life force or like this supernatural entity that makes you alive or that makes everything what it is, kind of a placeholder for, I mean, it's a god of the gaps thing here where they're using energy to describe things that they don't understand in the world, and attributing like this life force thing to the term energy. But then they're also trying to take examples of energy from science when we know that in science we're using the definition that you just described, like the ability to do work essentially and being able to apply that context to science. But they're taking their spiritual placeholder definition of energy and applying the same concepts of the science definition of energy and trying to use these terms interchangeably, which is a huge problem.
Yes, and it's, if you look at a lot of pseudoscience or a lot of anti-scientific writings and propaganda videos, whatever you find, they tend to do that. They tend to take something that is scientific, and they'll have one or two little bits. So people reading along are like, oh, that sounds scientific. And then it's a giant leap to their conclusion. But people have been caught in because this stuff is very, very complicated. It's not simple. And so they take advantage of that. And that does always annoy me. But yeah, I also want to emphasize the doing work part is very, very useful because it means it's detectable. If you're going to say that there is some energy coming off something or something has energy, those in themselves don't ring very well in my head in terms of exactly how you'd word it. But let's say that's, but you can get away with that. It's all right. It still means there's a way to detect it.
Yeah, and so just because we're using the same word for two different concepts does not mean that the concepts overlap simply because the word is the same. So that's something that like they're using to their advantage to sell their crystal products. And they say here they're using the Einstein quote, this is not philosophy, this is physics, when absolutely what they are saying is philosophy. They are not saying science.
Although I do like their previous line because they talk about everything is energy, the chair you're sitting on, the phone you are holding, and the crystals you know and love, all is vibrating energy. Where's this vibrating stuff coming from? They didn't mention that. No, that's not how energy works. The only time that you're going to be talking about vibrating energy is if somehow your energy is running some kind of oscillator system. So an oscillator is basically something that goes back and forth. Pendulum, the tides are an oscillating system to some degree. Well, I mean, they are to a full degree. It's just they're very, very complicated. You can even look at certain, like, depending on how you define things, a lot of systems can be modeled as basically back and forths. But that it's just like vibration is otherwise you would think of as temperature. So molecules that are vibrating, which is, I think, where they did their giant leap in logic. But that's the vibrating energy. That's one form of it. I think they're about to go off the rails with that. But.
Yes, they are. So they say, just like everything else in the universe, we each have our own unique vibrational frequency.
Oh, no.
People with higher vibrations radiate kindness, love, peace, and compassion, whereas people with lower vibrations experience more low vibe emotion. So they just used their term in their definition. So people with lower vibrations have low vibe emotions like jealousy, anxiety, anger, or fear. So they're smuggling so much into this. But I mean, okay, one question going into this. So humans, our physiology is all very similar. Like, sure, there might be some tiny differences between people just because we have genetic variation. But the reason why we can use things like medicine that apply to the vast majority of people is that our bodies work in the same way. We have the same organs, we have the same cell types, we have the same physics acting on our bodies. So despite the small genetic differences, like, there are advantages to having our bodies be pretty much the same. But even within medicine, we have different avenues we need to go down for different people based on those genetic differences. But then here, they're going so far as to say that every individual person has their own unique vibrational frequency. Like, we're all so incredibly different in our vibrational frequencies or whatever. But then they also want to peddle these crystals for everybody. Like, they're
generating
one crystal. So yeah, you're so different. You're so different that no one else has the same frequency as you. But also, this one rock is necessary to heal every person.
Yeah, they're generating their own term to make a problem that doesn't exist. But I'm just sitting here going, vibration of what? What's vibrating?
Yeah.
Because you talk about frequency. Like, to me, I normally deal with infrared spectroscopy. If I'm talking about frequency to other people, that's the frequency of the light we're using. And that's measured in hertz. You have to be able to measure it. So what's this frequency of? What's shaking? What's vibrating? So if I'm going to get very frustrated if they talk about like crystal resonances, because that's not how this. Although I can see chakras down the bottom, so this is like going basically exactly as well as we're both going to expect it to. But yeah, I'm not sure. What are they vibrating? Yes, the molecules in your body might individually vibrate with temperature. You don't have a vibration overall. The only thing I can think of in physics that would say maybe you have a frequency of some kind is that if you want to go to quantum mechanics and talk about objects having a waveform, yes, you can technically do that calculation for people, but we are way too big for that calculation to be meaningful, because we are bumping into molecules all the time, the air, and well, our body needs to know where our body is too, because it's stuff. So even if we tried looking at a waveform in quantum mechanics for our vibration, it's not going to work. It just won't. There's nothing to it. But I like this. It's like somehow low vibrations are evil and high vibrations are bad, or high frequencies are good. And I'm sitting there going, in the electromagnetic spectrum, really high frequencies are going to be the dangerous ones. It's UV, X-rays, and gamma rays. The low frequency ones are the ones that are allowing us to talk on the other side of the world, if you're thinking about the internet.
Yeah, it's interesting. So then they say, whatever frequency you're at as a human, your vibration is very unstable and very easily influenced. It changes constantly as we're exposed to other people, social media, the news, traffic, the weather, good news, bad news, our own memories, etc. Crystals, on the other hand, have a super stable energy frequency that doesn't change. Why? They're made up of a fixed, regularly repeating, perfect geometric pattern of molecules, and they maintain their perfect stability with no effort. Exactly the opposite of our constantly changing, non-stable human nature. All right, there's a lot to unpack in these two paragraphs.
So basically what they're going to say, if crystals can give you a stable frequency, crystals can basically rearrange your chemical and physical structures so that you become crystalline. Can I just point out that if the molecules in your body become crystalline, say, if you freeze them, it's going to rip every one of your cells to pieces. You're not going to be alive at the end of that.
Yeah. And just like because I don't even know what vibrations or frequencies they're referring to, because just like certain aspects of our body move, and that's just, having a body. You need parts to move to do their jobs, and that's not a vibration or a frequency. That's just things moving. And like, why is, like, if a crystal is the ideal frequency, and because it's stable, then it just seems like an odd compromise that you would rather be fixed and not able to move than be an organism with the ability to do things.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think how they're linking this, even in, because I have heard other similar claims before, and I'm not sure. I think it's almost like they think that crystals are like a tuning fork, like you whack them and they've got their own vibration. We just can't hear it or something. But that's not how these work. Because the thing is, if we're talking vibration in terms of the molecules, I just need to heat or cool the crystal to change those vibrations. And it's not one vibration. We think of them just going back and forward. It is way more complicated, because not only can you get back and forward, if you're talking about, say, molecules like water, if you want to make some crystals out of water, because you can do that, then the individual molecules will have their own different vibrations, in that the bonds will be moving back and forward. So the water molecules kind of look like they're doing a weird interpretive dance if you try and map them out. Like there are programs that have done it. They're not too hard to find if you want. Or they'll rotate. There's also rotation in this, and it's not straightforward. Crystals, yes, the individual molecules are fairly locked in place, but they'll still vibrate, and I can change that. I'm wondering if they're talking about something to do with diffraction, where the same, like if it's a crystal structure, you get the same wavelengths repeatedly diffracted, which is where you fire X-rays through it, and depending on the exact structure, they'll be bent or kind of. It looks like a deflection, but the name is diffraction in terms of exactly where they'll go, and then you can use that to figure out what the structure looks like. Like the first one was done with salt crystals, so sodium chloride, I believe, and then that was also what they used, what Rosalind used to figure out the structure of DNA. They were doing that; they were bouncing X-rays through it to see how they deflected. But I otherwise can't think of. But if I change the frequency of the X-rays, I'm going to slightly change the pattern. It'll have the same general shape, but I can change. I really don't get where they're going.
Well, and my question too, because we have examples of times when you can have crystals build up in your body. Like gout is a fantastic example. Gout and pseudo gout are probably the best examples of crystals. Another form of crystals are kidney stones.
Gout?
Oh, pseudo gout. It causes similar arthritis to gout, but the crystals are different. They're, I believe, positively birefringent, and they're more like rhomboid shaped instead of needle shaped. So it's just what I think they're calcium based crystals, but let me confirm that.
Gout is from uric acid buildup. Is that correct?
Yeah, gout is uric acid, and yeah, pseudogout is calcium pyrophosphate. So it's a different type of crystal, but
yes,
it's
you
similar
don't want
arthritis.
Yeah, see, that's what happens when you start rearranging molecules into a rigid structure in the body. Things go wrong very, very quickly with small amounts, which I'm sure you can
it builds
sit there
up
and tell
you
us
get
about
very
for a long time.
You get very painful joints. And these are things that people don't want to have. We're actively treating people every day for gout and kidney stones, and it will put people in the worst pain of their lives. So crystals don't make everything better. And we've seen, again, we have examples of people like having crystals in their body and it goes incredibly wrong. It does not do any of these good things. So I love that the crystals that they reference are all these very beautiful looking crystals, because of course those are the ones that they're going to try to sell. But we start bringing in things like uric acid crystals, pseudo gout, kidney stones. Like those aren't beautiful. So like, what if I start selling people's kidney stones and be like, yeah, this will align your chakras because it's a crystal. And it was in a human. It's the most living of crystals. I should be able to market this.
I have the feeling there would be people who would buy that.
Probably.
As scary as that is. But the thing is, oh, sorry, you've frozen on me. If that's
well, I think.
Sorry, you froze for a second. That could have been me though. Okay, good. One of the other things is I've got friends who work in solid state or condensed matter. They'll also work in this field of using crystals for various things. And one of the things they do with it is batteries. You can actually deal with crystalline structures and how things look physically in a battery. But I don't think any of these people are going to be selling you a battery. But at least in that case, I can guarantee you can get some energy out of it.
I'm going to start selling table salt. I'm going to start selling table salt and be like, you want some crystals? Like, here you go.
Oh,
there's a lot of crystals in my salt shaker.
A lot of it is. Yeah.
I mean,
your sugar is also crystalline.
Yeah. So I don't know where oh no, kidney crystals. It sounds like a business plan. So, okay, so they're going to try to explain why the stability matters. So, well, the more stable energy equals more powerful energy, and powerful energy can influence the energies around it. This is why crystals can so profoundly influence our unstable, less powerful energy. So this is just claims on claims on claims.
Well, I can debunk this one very, very quickly.
With more claims.
So more stable energy equals more powerful energy. Have these guys heard of a supernova?
I doubt it.
I cannot think of a single example of something stable having more energy than something unstable. Not necessarily. I mean, yes, I can think of very stable examples, or seemingly stable examples. Like the sun is fairly stable at the moment and it's producing energy, but it doesn't work in their favor because the more energy you pump into a system, the more likely it is to do something because, well, it's the ability to do work. So it's broken very badly. But I'm now just thinking of a lot of things like explosives. I mean, lasers. Yes, you can make a very stable laser, but they're very energy hungry. But it's not stable because they have a lot of energy. It's stable because you've done a lot of work to keep it. Fusion is remarkably unstable, and that is one of the most powerful energy sources that we currently have access to. And yet it's so powerful, we can't actually use it to get useful stuff out. Well, at least on a big scale. Yeah, they've made kind of small breakthroughs to getting there. So fusion is what the sun does when you push basically at this stage, we're pushing hydrogen together to make helium. So you're pushing small molecules, bigger ones, and you get a lot of energy out of that. It is so high powerful. It is so unstable that we haven't figured out how to actually maintain it for a long period of time. So that statement is basically as wrong as you could get with energy. No, stable and high energy don't. But again, I want to know what because energy has to be measured in joules. And yes, the states might think of calories, and particularly if you're thinking about like consuming food type energy, yes, but I'm using standard units, SI units, which are in joules, but you can do the conversion anyway. So they have an equivalent. So how many joules is there to a stable crystal? That's a question they should be able to answer if any of this is true, but I think we both very well know that answer as to whether they could.
So Tobin has a question. Why don't we use crystals for nuclear energy? Can you answer that?
Because they're just too powerful. So you probably could. You could actually make uranium crystals. And remember, just because something is a crystal, we think of this nice big crystal structure. But you can powder something up and basically have, billions upon trillions of little tiny crystals as a powder. I can definitely run a nuclear reactor off that. And I think some of the uranium and the plutonium, depending on exactly which reactor it is, they would have a crystal structure to them because they're the metal, the way it would form. It's because here's the other thing in chemistry: a crystal doesn't represent what everybody else might think of it as. It is, as they almost get fairly well. It's an ordered structure, basically. But when we're talking about molecules, it doesn't take very many of them to be ordered, but that doesn't necessarily mean to our eyes that it's this giant crystal. That's a single crystal. You can actually have a powder made up of, as I said, trillions upon trillions. We're looking at orders of magnitude our brains do not easily comprehend here because molecules and numbers, but you can have a lot of them. So yes, I actually could power a nuclear power plant off crystals. It's not going to be a giant quartz crystal. That is definitely not going to happen. It's been powered not because of the crystals, but the fact that the uranium's decaying.
So you ready? You ready for some chakras?
Can we ever be ready?
I don't think so. But this will be fun. So it says every crystal, just like every human, has a different energetic frequency. It depends on a few different factors like the size, the composition, and most helpfully, the color.
Okay,
why does crystal color matter?
This actually nearly makes sense. So if we're talking about visible light, and even then invisible light to us, but it can be visible to other creatures, the frequency will actually change the color. So that's close to being correct, but this is also that sinister side where they do have some sites and then take a giant leap. So it's a really cool way to drag people in. And this is why, it was like, how do people get, buy into this? Well, it's the rhetoric on a lot of these places can be fairly convincing. And if we're talking about size, a good example I like is radio antennas in terms of producing different wavelengths. Yes, I know that's not visible, but it's all electromagnetic spectrum, so it's the same physics that applies. If you have a higher frequency, a shorter wavelength, that's bluer light. If it's longer wavelengths, it tends to be redder light. And so you'll hear about blue and red shifts, or moving to the blue end or the red end of the spectrum, and that can be that we can't see. It's just an easy way to refer to it. One of the things with radio antennas is, if you go back to the very, very, very early radios like World War I, one of the big problems of having small portable radios is they couldn't actually have circuits that would could produce short waves. So they needed giant ass antennas. So you couldn't have small portable radios until later in the war, because that radio antenna the size of the antenna was directly linked with the wavelength they were producing. The longer the wavelength, the longer the antenna. So that's why I said they actually came close here. Well, if you ignore the fact that humans produce different energetic frequencies, but I still, like, can they give me an order of magnitude? I want to know, but maybe that's me taking this way too far with the science. I just want to know, what are we dealing with?
I don't know if they know what an
kilohertz?
order of magnitude is. I don't know if they
I
understand.
doubt it either. If anyone's not sure, it's just basically multiples of 10. So if I said this is an order of magnitude bigger than something else, I'm saying it's 10 times as big. So if I said it's three orders of magnitude, it's 1,000. Just
you're back.
Sorry, to quickly talk about this. Oh, okay, good. Sorry, that could be my internet. It should be all right, but it's the weather's been a little bad. We've had a few storms, so that can sometimes mess with it. If it gets really unstable, I'll switch to my phone.
It's fine. That's fine. We're good. We'll make it work. So the next thing that they say is why does crystal color matter? The colors we see are specific light frequencies. Red, for example, has a much lower frequency than purple. The same goes for our own bodies. If you look at a chakra diagram, the lowest chakra, the root chakra, is shown in red, which aligns with the low vibrational frequency of that chakra. Your crown chakra, on the other hand, is shown in purple as the highest vibration chakra and the highest vibration color. So this is an interesting language tool that they're using here, because when we're talking about frequency, right? Like it's the frequency of the wavelength. When we say low, that means a fewer amount of waves over a period of time, right? And then a higher amount over a period of time. So that's not high and low as in like above and below. That's just more or fewer waves. And then here they're talking about high or low versus above and below, like your head is above your sacrum. And that's using similar terminology, but with it's a false definition. Like they're using the same word that has multiple definitions and assuming that they can all be interchangeable. So this is odd.
But as I said, there is a base to the science here. It's just they take it way, way, way too far and get it so ridiculously wrong. Because the thing is that I'm thinking of is that in physics, you always need a reference. Like you need something to compare it to. It's like, how long's a piece of string? I love that phrase, because it's like when someone talks about high and low frequencies, compared to what? Yes, I get it that if you're talking about higher and lower, you can talk about shifting. And if we're talking about visible light, yes, red is low and purple is high. But here's the other part, because they're using, as you very, very rightly pointed out, they're using it in two ways to also refer to up and down on the body. What if I flip you upside down or put you in deep space? Because up is not very well defined there, which then would indicate that somehow the body can produce light from low down and it gets more bluer as we move up. But the thing is, this is what I said, it has to be detectable. You can't have invisible red light. That's oxymoronic. It just definitionally doesn't work. It's like saying I've got a light shadow. A shadow is the absence of light.
If this was operating on the visible light spectrum, we would be able to see the chakras visibly, right?
Yes.
And we don't see them. So it needs to be
And-
something, if it is some kind of energy frequency, they should not be defining it by the visual light spectrum, because it's not consistent with the definitions that we have and with our ability to detect the visible light spectrum.
Yeah, and
So,
there's sort of two things here, and I don't want to add this because I think I know where they're going with the crystal things. So I want to see in advance whether I can debunk something. We'll see. But one of the things too is that when we talk about colors for, say, crystals or materials, there's kind of it does get very complicated. But the exact colors we see comes from their electronic structure. And if I'm seeing red, for example, and let's not talk about lights that are specifically giving off red, but an object that you have to actually shine light on to see. So if anyone here is sitting at a phone or a computer, you can look around your room. If you've got any paint, any color on anything, it's likely to be a dye. We're seeing, let's say, I've got my blue drink bottle. I'm seeing blue because the red light is being absorbed. It's what's missing. And if I look at a crystal of some kind, that's how it works. It gets very complicated in terms of exactly how it works. But if I have a red crystal, it's because the blue light is what's going missing. It's been absorbed because that's the structure. And in fact, it's really, really cool. Take ruby, for example. I actually made a ruby in my first year of uni. It was
wow.
amazing to be able to do. And we made a ruby, tried to make a single ruby crystal, and it didn't grow very well because it's a very difficult one to make with the machine we had. But we did get some out of it. Its base structure is aluminium oxide, and it's clear. Aluminium oxide is a single crystal. If you grow it, is clear. If you powder it up, it's a white powder. To get that red color that we see is actually you're adding in a bit of chromium oxide, which just distorts that crystal structure and the electronics, and all of a sudden blue light starts to go missing. The more we add, the more blue light that starts going missing, so the redder it becomes, because blue is the opposite end of the spectrum. Easy way to do this, look at a color wheel. Whatever you're seeing, what's on the other side is what's roughly going missing. I said, things that give off light is a bit different. So because you have to, the electronics and things, but even then it's still similar-ish physics, but we're going the other way around. We're producing light and you have to pump energy in. So I think they're going to talk about the crystal structures and somehow they correspond to a color. But as I said, you can distort the same crystal within the electronics and the structure a bit and get very, very different colors. And that's how we get all the different colors of our various gems. The base chemical structure can be the same, and it's actually distortions, but it's all from the electronics. It's not because they have a rigid structure. There are so many things that I can produce the same color from. So
yeah,
it's very, very complicated, and they're not going to get any of that nuance.
No, no, they're not. So also, Titan made a really good point that
oh, hi, Titan.
We do need bingo cards. We do need bingo cards. Next time we will have a Medical Myths bingo card, and chakra will be on it. Yes. So the
vibration needs to be on it too.
Oh yeah, vibrations, frequency. So choosing crystals for you. So now they're trying to sell us things. So because of this vibrational match between like colors, you can usually choose your crystal to match the chakra you want to balance. For example, blue sapphires are good for your throat chakra, which is shown in blue, just as amber and yellow topaz crystals align with your yellow solar plexus chakra. There are a few exceptions like rose quartz, which is connected to the green heart chakra, but in general, this is a good place to start. Okay. If you're not sure which chakra to focus on, just pick the crystal that your intuition guides you to. The one that you just love. Your own body intuition knows what it needs. All right.
So if it was scientific, there would be a way to tell. It wouldn't be just do what you feel. But here's the thing, rose quartz is only colored because of the impurities in it. It's only colored because of the differences, the things that get into it that are not naturally part of it. The fact that this structure is distorted, which goes against everything they were saying about how they've all got such a nice, clean structure, and that's why their frequencies. And this, yeah, no. But I just like it's basically color matching. If I tried anything this simplified to my supervisors, I'm either going to get laughed out of the room or I'm going to get a very stern talking to.
Yeah.
Plus, I think if your throat is blue and your solar plexus are yellow, correct me if I'm wrong, student Dr. Ben, but I think you need to go see a proper doctor.
So I need to address something in the chat. Well, a couple things. Do not swallow a sapphire, please. Unless it's in a small enough. I mean, the biggest concern here is choking on it. So, I mean, if it's a small enough piece to where you're not going to choke on it, I mean, do whatever you want, but just don't choke on it. And also, Kyle says that he thinks his body needs sugar, so that's wrong. I mean, yeah, sugar is a crystal. And I mean, my body does enjoy sugar crystals a whole lot. So my intuition is telling me that the crystal I should be buying comes in the form of donuts.
Yeah, I'll
so I'm just gonna buy
take
donuts.
that. I'll have a donut. They can, and I think people, once they've had a donut or two, they feel a lot better, so they're much nicer. So I don't know how that makes your frequency higher, but
yeah, I mean,
there we go.
I'm just gonna use that to sell donuts. I'm gonna use crystal energy to sell donuts. Is what it's like. But my donuts are the best for aligning your chakras because they're of the good crystals.
Also, you can see in that picture too, based on the fact that you can't see through them and they're very cloudy, that they're not a single crystal. That, as I said, it's multiple sites that are growing in different directions. So they're not; these aren't even very well ordered structures. Yes, they're more than, say, a piece of wood or anything, but you can tell by just looking at them that they're not brilliant crystals. They might look pretty, but that's. Oh, and also talking about crystals, some of the Himalayan pink rock salt, you can actually find some radioactive elements in it, and some of the things that these people will sell also as crystals can be slightly radioactive. So be very careful with them. In terms, like some of the necklaces and pendants that I've seen, that it comes along a similar line about absorbing negative radiation, end up being radioactive because they're made from volcanic material that is radioactive. So the health advice, even though these people like buy them, wear them, put them on you, is don't wear them for very long. Like, it's not a dangerous amount, but it's not something you should keep directly on you. So there's another reason not to drink them or to eat them.
Yeah, no, that's a very good reason.
He said, "Oh, chips! I can put salt on my chips." That's another crystal we can sell.
Yeah.
So we've got donuts, we've got chips. And for me, chips is both, I think, what you would call chips and fries. So you can do both. So I'm happy.
They can be both. Okay. Good.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
at least to me, it is.
So here you go. The chakras are the 7 energetic centers that energy moves through in the body. They're each connected with different organs and functions in our mind, body, and spirit. If you start at the bottom, the root chakra, you have the lowest vibrational frequency, and its qualities mirror this. If it's concerned with the very basic elements of science, primarily with your safety and physical survival. As you move up the chakra system, you go from the more fundamental emotions to the deeper feelings of joy, love, and creativity. So we're adding some medicine now here. So I finally have some things I can add. But we have the root chakra, which is red, and that is your connection with the earth, your physical survival and safety. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, so when we're talking about energy physiologically, we're talking generally about ATP and GTP. And you're talking about being able to use your muscles and be able to carry out physiologic functions. So they're saying that it takes like the least amount of energy to do these basic things. But if we're talking safety and physical survival, you have like an evolutionary need to survive. That's within all of us, and your body is going to go into fight or flight mode, your sympathetic system, and then your parasympathetic system. If your physical survival is something that is at stake at a current period of time, like you're spending way more energy than you normally need to, because you feel like you need to survive, that you have to expend that energy to survive. So you're going to have your muscles working harder. This is going to require more ATP. So they're again equating definitions that can't be equated. Having low energy for something basic, like, yes, survival is a basic need, but it requires so much of your energy. Oh no, did I lose you? Are you frozen again? So now hear me out. Enough sugar crystals increases blood pressure slowly, which is a wave, so could be a frequency. Bam, good crystal. The crystal's good. I mean, it's true. It's true. You need ADP. Yeah. Are we talking? Oh, you're talking about money. Okay, interesting. Well, almost a doctor will be back in hopefully in a sec. I think the computer internet connection's being weird. So I guess I'll cover this next little bit until he gets back. So we have the sacral chakra next, which is the creative life force energy that makes you human, which I'm wondering how this life force energy relates to your sacrum. We do know that the parasympathetic nervous system does have a lot of influence from the sacral branch of the nervous system. Specifically, it's the pelvic splanchnic nerve, because the sacral splanchnic nerve is for sympathetic, and then the pelvic splanchnic nerve is for parasympathetic. And your parasympathetic system has kind of two components: the vagus nerve and the pelvic splanchnic nerve. Yeah, so it looks like he's coming back in. The internet just went out for a sec. So for the majority of the body, the parasympathetic system is influenced by the vagus nerve. However, things that we call like below the pelvic pain line. So I think some of your bladder is not in that. It's a little bit above, but generally like pelvis and below related to the pelvic splanchnic nerve. So if that's what they're talking about, I doubt they understand this. But I would argue this is going to be your creative life force is going to be more related to the brain and less to do with the parasympathetic activity of the sacrum and of the pelvis. So I would debate them on that. And he's back. Awesome.
Yes, sorry, I think my internet just suddenly crashed on me, and
no, you're good. You're good. I was just talking about the nervous system a little bit, so
no, I missed it.
But it's okay.
Yeah, I was still being told I had connection, although there's a frequency thing because we're using electromagnetic radiation, and it looks like there was a problem there somewhere along the line. Hopefully this works now, and I stay for the rest of the show.
Yeah, it sounds fine right now.
Okay, good.
So we got through the root chakra and the sacral chakra. So the next one is the solar plexus, which is yellow. And this is the seat of your personal power, the internal wisdom and confidence within you. Why? I get that the solar plexus is important to a lot of people. And that it's just like, I don't get why people care so much about the damn solar plexus. Like, sure, some nerves can converge there, but it doesn't do anything. We don't do any medicine for the solar plexus because it's not important. It's not. I mean, it's important to do what it does, but it doesn't. Acting on the solar plexus isn't going to really influence much else. We don't target that with any treatments. So it's a bit ridiculous. The heart chakra is green, and love and compassion for yourself and others. Okay. We can pretty quickly go through these because they're all just kind of BS. The throat chakra is blue and allows us to speak our truth with clarity, love, and kindness. The third eye chakra, indigo, is your connection to your intuition and information beyond the material world. And the crown chakra is violet, and it is the connection to consciousness and all that is. So all of these are have a lot of spiritual components, as you can see. But they are claiming that your chakras can become imbalanced based on influences or experiences in our lives. When this happens, we get out of alignment. Whether this misalignment shows up as a physical symptom, emotional disruption, or mental ailment, there'll be signs that your energy is out of balance. This is where crystals come in. They can help rebalance any misalignment, returning the energy centers to the frequencies they're meant to vibrate at. So this is interesting to me because they gave in all of these examples of what these chakras do. These are all spiritual aspects. None of these are physical, with the exception of physical survival and safety, but they're using it also in a very spiritual sense here. So how exactly does acting on these very vague spiritual aspects influence physical symptoms? Like, how is that more valid than the science that we know in real life that we can demonstrate pathophysiology and specific disease processes that act on a human?
Well, if there was something to it, this would be part of medicine, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Like, we would already be doing this. This is so much easier than everything that we're doing in medicine.
Yes, and here's the thing. If they're talking about frequencies, I said you need to be able to measure them. So frequency is normally measured in hertz or some order of magnitude of hertz, like kilohertz, megahertz, etc. Your phone will generally operate in the mega to gigahertz range if you're talking about the signals, if anyone was interested. And here's the thing. If they're talking like this about frequency, you should be able to measure it. They should be able to say roughly what frequencies are involved, or at least a range, and they should have a way of detecting them. Particularly if it's energy, it does work. So it means we can pick it up with something. It'll do work to a detector. It's how a thermometer basically works. Is you stick it in, and the energy from whatever source you're trying to look at transfers, or if we're talking about cooling it off, goes away from the thermometer, and so you can have a look at that change, particularly if it's an old mercury, or now a lot of them I think are ethanol anyway, to avoid mercury poisoning. You can see them going up and down. So there are ways to detect them. So I don't see color coming out of people.
No. I mean, I see blood come out of people sometimes, and that has
That's
a color.
red.
I also see urine come out of people sometimes, and that's yellow. So are we going in a direction of the humors now? Because that sounds like the next step would be to apply these colors to the 4 humors. But this is just so sketchy. And like, does using one of these crystals, is that going to, so acting on my spiritual vibrational frequencies, is that going to tell my thyroid to produce more thyroid hormone? Or like, how does this work? How do we, does the energy compete with TSH for the receptor? Is it a stimulation process?
Or do these people know what a receptor is?
Yeah, or is the frequency a substrate in the reaction? Is it a substitute for iodine? Is that where it comes in? Like, how does this interplay with the mechanism of secretion of thyroid hormone? And if it does interact in that way, can I also use the same crystal to combat hyperthyroidism? Will it also simultaneously like stimulate the thyroid gland when I need it to, but then also inhibit the thyroid gland when I need it to? I mean, if it's universal, if it can do all of these things, why are we not using this? Because this sounds way easier than, titrating someone's levothyroxine. So, I mean, if you had anything here, like, y'all should get a Nobel Prize, because, like, I could do so many better things with my time if this is all it took. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. It's like, what do you call alternative medicine that works? Medicine.
Exactly. Yeah. So our fave crystals for chakra balancing. So citrine is aligned with the sacral chakra. Citrine magnifies our manifestations and helps us reconnect with our divine feminine energy, the center of our emotions, sexual energy, and sacred creativity. Is there such a thing as not sacred creativity?
There must be.
Anyway.
Apparently.
Oh, physically, the sacral chakra is connected with your lady parts, low back, pelvic area, and your hips. So what do men do? It's the sacral chakra is connected with your lady parts.
Wait,
so
does
if
this
you don't
mean that
have
if
lady parts,
so I'm now confused. If I start shaking people at different frequencies, can I change them from male to female and vice versa?
I mean, I'm trans. Like, do this. Can you shake me and help me, like, physically transition?
I mean, I could think of how
amazing.
one type of vibration might help with certain body parts, but I don't think that's appropriate for
but that's
YouTube.
Yeah. But I've already done that. So
also, I'm just looking it up. So citrine is just basically quartz with some iron oxide contaminants in it. So the color you're seeing here doesn't actually come from the quartz. The quartz is clear. So the color you're seeing is basically rust.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean. It doesn't actually, this one here, it's not just that I'm distorting the crystal structure. No, in this case, it's just impurities that are sitting there. It's like just bits of powder stuck throughout it. So yeah, they don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah. So there's citrine. The next one is amethyst. Aligned with the crown chakra, amethyst helps us with infinite consciousness. That sounds like a Deepak Chopra thing right there. The pure white light and all-knowing wisdom that's always available to us. Physically, the crown chakra imbalances can show up as depression, light or sound sensitivity, or difficulty understanding new information. This is so problematic on so many levels.
I'm having a look at seeing what it actually is.
But thinking about people with depression, or it sounds like also they're targeting people who are neurodivergent with light or sound sensitivity, so people who get sensory overload. Like, they're being targeted by this, saying that their crown chakra is out of alignment. So you have certain sensory needs that are different than other people in the general public. So you need to buy my crystals and align your crown chakra, instead of, just understanding that some people just interact with the world differently and have different responses to stimuli, and maybe just certain stimuli get more of a response from certain people, so it can be overwhelming. Like, this is targeting people with mental illness and who are neurodivergent, and that is incredibly disgusting of them.
And yeah, it will stop people from getting the help they need. And on a slightly lighter note, the Greeks used to think that sorry, it's too early for me to talk properly, used to help protect you from drunkenness. So, I mean, it doesn't, but in that sense, you could sort of say that would help protect you from losing your consciousness, depending on how much you drank. But I can't think of any other way that would do you any good for that. But yeah, again, this is physics from this is the color is not coming from the quartz, it's impurities. I think it's, from what I can read, it's a mix of, again, iron and other metals plus irradiation. So fun times. Or at least there's some
And-
radioactivity.
An
I don't
infinite
think
consciousness.
I don't know what that is. It's like saying infinite wetness. What is that?
Right. Right.
It's an emergent property, so it's like, or like infinite darkness. It's like, there's light somewhere, so it can't be.
All right, we have another quartz.
Oh,
So many
so far
quartz.
these have all been quartz.
There's all been
'Cause-
quartz.
Yes, quartz is. It's not as though quartz is common, and you can find these crystals in a lot of places and sell them for huge markups. And you add all this on top of them to make them sound more valuable.
Mhm. So, aligned with the heart chakra, rose quartz helps awaken love and compassion for others and ourselves and for others. Physically, the heart chakra blockages can show up as back and shoulder pain, asthma, or arm pain. No, do not do this. Do not use quartz for your asthma. You need to have medications. And if you're having back and shoulder pain that is potentially also related to chest pain, you need a hospital because you're probably having a heart attack. This is dangerous. But also, because they did mention that rose quartz was like the only one that was not the color of the chakra, because the heart chakra is green, but rose quartz is pink. But they didn't explain why they get to have the exception, because they made this whole grand argument that the colors aligned because of the frequency. And then they just said, yeah, well, this one's an exception, but they never even attempted to explain why they give it an exception. So
I don't think they know either.
yeah,
It's such
but
a
also
weird
like
one to have
isn't
an
pink
exception.
also isn't pink a shade of red? So
Yeah.
technically this should be related to red.
Yes, but yeah, they're making exceptions to their own rules somehow.
Yeah.
But again, this is not going to help. Crystals will, if anything, damage you rather than help you. So don't use this. Don't use this.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Opalite. I mean, this is a very pretty crystal. Aligned with the third eye chakra.
I think someone in the chat wins. They did pick up a reference to the third eye, I think, a while back. So
oh yeah, it
or
was
at least I
Titan.
saw-
Titan's thing,
Yeah.
the pineal gland. Yep. Yeah, and this is a good point. Yeah, because certain very serious conditions can be diagnosed from a variety of different symptoms. So please get help. Don't use a crystal. But opalite aligns with the third eye chakra, strengthens your connection to the divine, and raises your energetic frequency to attract the abundance you are meant for. Known as the destiny crystal, opalite points you towards your unique path and purpose. Physically, the third eye chakra blockages show up as headaches, sinus problems, eye strain, or blurred vision.
Yeah, if you're having any of those that don't go away quickly, go see a doctor. Like not me type of doctor, that type of doctor.
If you get sudden blurred vision or a sudden headache, please go see somebody because you might be having a stroke.
There's because these are things where often, it may not be too serious, but the problem is that when they are serious, they can be very damn dangerous.
Very, very serious.
And things are related. So like pain in one spot may mean trouble somewhere else. So go make sure a doctor checks this out. But third eye, I am yet to find that it just doesn't seem to exist. Though, interestingly enough, a lot of animals, if you want to look one of the remaining examples, because a lot of lizards sort of had it, or at least the reptiles did, the tuatara from New Zealand do actually have the remnants of an actual third eye. All it did was a photosensitive spot looking up that was, I think, used to detect like the difference between light and shadow. So maybe it could tell temperature differences, whether you're in the sun or the shade, and potentially spot a predator by the shadow. But they were not more than that. And humans definitely don't have them.
Yeah.
So not going to get anywhere. They are pretty colors, but that's about
They're pretty.
it.
They're very pretty.
The only way this is going to help is if it calms you down because it's pretty to look at.
So the funny thing about this company here is that they don't just sell you the crystals. Like they grind up the crystals and put them in their beauty products. And so not only can they sell their like eyeshadows at a really expensive price, like for being a luxury product, but now they can say that they have some health benefit and are going to mark it up even more than it should be because people are thinking, oh, I can treat my ailments at the same time as using a cosmetic product. So I didn't actually look at how much they're selling these for. Actually, no, I did look up one of them. But they have, yeah, so they got this gemstone palette that is infused with sapphires. This one is infused with rose quartz, which actually, like, I actually don't even know if what I said was accurate in the sense that I don't even know if they ground up the crystals and put them into the product or if they, because they might also be saying that, because I've seen some people do this where infusion of the crystal is you put it in the water with something or you put it in a water bag next to something and then like the energy infuses so that you might not even be getting any crystalline product in there. They might just have held the eyeshadow next to the crystal and have labeled that as infusion of energy.
Yeah,
So,
it's very iffy as to what they're actually meaning. But I
also,
think
like,
from this point,
how would sapphires soothe and hydrate the skin?
I think they think blue equals water for some reason.
Like, I'm gonna rub rocks on my skin and that's gonna hydrate me. Like, what?
Don't drink water from crystals, please. Radioactivity can
Don't.
still be an
Yeah.
issue with some of them, and some of them are toxic. So be very careful what you put on your face.
Here's your rubies. It's in lips
They're not putting actual
gloss.
ruby in here. So like that
Oh
stuff
no,
is
they're
not easy to
not.
produce.
It's
To
not easy to
actually,
produce, and it would be way more expensive. This is the one that I did look up the cost for, and it's $28. So that's nowhere near the cost that it would be if there were actual rubies in it.
yeah, to make a ruby, even just as a powder, so not even the crystal, you need to take aluminium oxide and dope it with. I mean, you can use other ones, but the main one is chromium oxide. And to do so, you basically need to put it in an oven at 1500 degrees Celsius for a few days. That's not a cheap process or an easy one. Now, yes, you could set up to do it industrially, but you're not going to be doing that for this. So, yeah, I don't think there'd be any detectable levels of those chemicals in here.
Mhm.
And you don't really want them to be there. They're not, like, aluminium is not, oxide is not particularly dangerous from my understanding to people, but yeah, it's not going to do any good.
Maybe it's homeopathic ruby where they have one ruby that they purchased
They just
and
dip it in.
yeah, well this water touched this ruby at one point in time and now we're using that water and diluting it more and more and more and then we're using some of that diluted touched a ruby water to put into the lip gloss and so that's how you get the energy from the ruby because it touched a ruby.
I just like their bottom line there, which kind of also touches on rubies help hydrate, nourish, and protect the skin from aging free radicals like pollution.
I would love
Which
some
one?
evidence. I would love some
Also,
evidence on
pollution
that.
is not like you can tell. This is where they've heard words and not understood
Yeah.
them
I don't
because
think they know what a
yeah,
free
they
radical is.
yeah a free. So if anyone wants to know, a free radical is a chemical. Oh, sorry, is a basically a molecule or an atom where it doesn't have the number of electrons it's happy to because things like to balance their electrons because if you're sitting, but depending on where you sit on the periodic table, they like to have a filled outer shell or to lose the outer shell so that the next one is the full one. And they'll sometimes share, particularly if you're looking at organic molecules. If you have a free radical, it's got a spare electron that needs a friend or wants to go and be the donor itself. They're incredibly dangerous, and they will do a lot of damage, including damage to the DNA. Is how radiation, particularly say if you want to look at UV, actually the mechanism by which it does damage, you basically create free radicals after creating charges, and that goes around and will rip things like DNA to pieces. So you don't want them around. I can guarantee you a bit of ruby on your skin is not going to help with that.
Yeah,
It's not going to help with the free radicals in you, but pollution is so many things. Yes, there are forms of pollution that could cause free radicals, but there's also a lot of pollution and toxic chemicals that are not going to cause free radicals. They're going to do you a lot of damage. Mercury poisoning, that'll do it. I don't need free radicals from that. I just need to replace some of the metals already in you with mercury, and you're in trouble. Lead poisoning. Food poisoning, if you want to look at the chemicals, the dangerous chemicals the bacteria make, that's also and also a lot of aging, I think, is linked to epigenetics rather than
epigenetics
pure...
and telomeres. A lot of it's related to telomeres, and that's not even related to free radicals. But people also like to forget that free radicals are necessary to be alive. So you don't want too many of them because they can interfere with protein structures and enzyme function. Because of course, if you have electrons floating around that can just react with whatever they want to, like, you're going to mess with molecules. But you rely on free radicals for the electron transport chain. That is how it functions. So you don't want to get rid of all your free radicals because you can't have an electron transport chain without free radicals. So it's just a matter of limiting them to that area, limiting them to the context where they are helpful, and having mechanisms like glutathione to actually detoxify you of free radicals. But that's like a whole conversation for another day on free radicals. But yeah, they're using terms that they have no idea about and that they don't understand. They have a mascara with diamonds, and it connects you to the infinite consciousness. So there
we showed you what that was.
It is the highest vibe stone of all. What do you think about that?
I can't think. My brain isn't working after hearing that. I don't know what's going on there.
Another antioxidant.
Amber for yours.
Oh, they're mentioning succinic acid.
No. Oh, this is horrid. They're basically saying an acid is an antioxidant. Like the definition, one of the old definitions of acids was that they were an oxidant.
Yeah.
Acids are oxidizing agents.
Yep.
This is as wrong as you could be when talking about acids. It's like
your
saying light is a shadow.
Are fighting the free radicals.
Despite the fact that it's oxidizing agent. Yeah, except the fact that oxidizing agents are what causes free radicals, or at least can. That is as wrong as you could be. I don't think it's possible. But said something more stupid.
So I think since we spent a lot of time on that article, and I'm glad we did, because this was like the primary thing I wanted to talk about. So I don't think we're going to watch the video or anything else today. Maybe we'll pick up again on a different time and address that. But they kind of say a lot of the same things that we saw here. Although there's one point I did want to say that this video had mentioned. And they actually made a claim about like density, like the energy of the crystals have not that the crystals had different densities, but the energy was of different densities. And I was very confused by that.
You can have different energy densities depending on systems that you're talking about, because yes, if you're talking about the ability to do work, I can have a system where for a given, I guess, mass, I can put a lot more. There can be a lot more useful energy you can get out of it. So I can heat an object and I've technically increased the energy density. If we're talking about, say, stars, it's a good one. They have a very high energy density compared to, say, the microphone that I'm speaking into.
But having two different types of quartz affecting your spiritual energy, does that have anything to do with density? Oh no, we lost him. Well,
Oh, back.
oh, you're back. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there. I think my internet, as I
That's
said,
okay.
has been a bit dodgy because of the weather. The yeah, well, as soon as they bring in things like chakras, it's like, well, this is already nonsense. So there's not much we can do with it. I guess if the crystal is more dense, so there's more matter in the given area, and that equals mc squared, yes, it does have a higher mass equivalence. But also, if I heat an object, it gets heavier. It goes both ways. So, but I don't think that's what they're going for. And it's also,
I don't think so.
yes, there's things about useful energy. Yes, technically, there's a higher energy equivalence. That doesn't mean I can do anything with it.
Yeah.
A ball of lead has a higher, is more massive than say a ball of like a lithium-based battery. Doesn't mean I'm going to get any useful energy out of the lead. If it's pure lead, obviously, then if you're talking about like lead-based batteries, but even then, lithium ones will tend to be better. Which is why a lot of things are. There's a lot of focus on that, and why we don't run our computers off a car battery.
Yeah. So this was a very interesting discussion about crystals, and of course, Almost a Doctor brought a whole lot of awesome physics to this conversation, and I'm very appreciative of this. So kind of wrapping up, what's next for you?
As in what I've got coming up?
Yeah, what do you got coming up? I know you said you have a video being released today.
So yes, I hope to get it out today. It'll be on the Fisher Space Pen. So if anyone's heard about the NASA spending millions of dollars to develop a pen that worked in space and the Russians just brought a pencil, well, that's all complete nonsense. That never happened. That's not the story. I'm going to go into it. So hopefully that people find that interesting, and also how these pens work. But coming up right after this, so it'll be 10 a.m. my time, so the turn of the next hour for whatever time zone you're in. I'm going to be on another channel. I'll see if I'm not allowed to put links, but I'm on Vanadium 1998 channel, and we've got we're going to be talking about space lasers. So the title, if you just go hashtags space lasers.
Titan, can you grab a link for that? Titan is really good about finding links.
Oh, good. So I'm going to be on there too. So if people haven't already got sick of my voice, then you'll get to hear me there, and we'll be taking a nice fun look at lasers in space, and I'll go through some of the examples of where we have used lasers, where they are very, very useful in space, and I'll also talk a little bit, hopefully, if the time permits, on Project Excalibur, which is basically what happens when America attempts to do a Star Wars. Which awesome. Is, they basically tried to build a Death Star type laser powered by a nuclear bomb.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so, it was an interesting but very, very flawed idea.
So where else can they find you on your channel?
Yes,
so any other platforms that you're on?
I'm on Twitter as well. So my Twitter handle is Dr. Almost, so Dr_Almost, because I couldn't quite get Almost a Doctor. Someone else had already taken that. Oh, well. But yes, you can find, my channel is Almost a Doctor. So as it says down there, it should be fairly easy to find, although you have put my links for both of those down below. So if anyone wants, there's an easy click.
Go give him a subscribe and a follow.
Thank you. And yes, I am now starting to do live streams myself. So I tend to do actually roughly this time so it's Sunday morning my time. So if you're interested, I'll do some science streams, and I do occasionally now do sort of debunk streams as well. So if you want more of that, you can do that. Maybe I can get you on. We can do a medical debunk.
That'd be awesome. I'd be so down. And so we got that coming up. So after this, go watch Almost a Doctor on that show, and then after that I'm going to be on the RFR fundraiser tonight on your friendly neighborhood atheist channel. So I don't go on until 9:30 Central Time, but it starts earlier than that. So go hang out there once you're done watching Almost a Doctor on the other live stream today. And then, of course, next week, we're going to meet at our normal time for Medical Myths, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I have a special guest scheduled for next week, so be there for that. Also, shout out to the wonderful patrons, Reggie and Kevin. Thank you for supporting the channel. And for those of you who want to join the Patreon, we do normally do an after show on the Patreon, but we don't have that this week because we actually did it before the stream, knowing that a lot of things are happening this afternoon here. But thank you for supporting the channel. Thanks everybody for joining in today, and we will see you next time.